auntie, 89 years old, depended on me totally, relied on me totally, loved me totally. Don't anybody tell me or say to me that I've done anything at all to hurt that person, that wonderful person. And that's the worst thing of being, to first of all be accused of, but then for a jury to convict you wrongly of is horrendous.
In March 1992, 87-year-old Hilda Marchbank was murdered in her bed in Royton near Manchester. Susan May, her niece and full-time carer, was convicted of the murder and spent 12 years in prison. With serious doubts over the forensic evidence and the conduct of the police investigation, May, after 2 unsuccessful appeals and suffering from breast cancer, continues the fight to clear her name. I went with Susan to her aunt's former home, the scene of the crime.
That morning when I came was a normal morning, and I came across, and I still don't think I've dealt with what I came across that morning, because events take over. I'm accused, then I'm convicted, and I'm fighting for my life, if you want, now, and I just don't think that I've ever grieved for Auntie.
And that's the house there?
And this is Auntie's house, yes.
The house had been ransacked, displaying all the hallmarks of a botched burglary.
I put my handbag down on one side and Auntie's lunch down on another unit in the kitchen and walked towards where the bedroom was, saying that "You're not up, Mrs M," or something like that, with lazy bones. Pushed open the door and came across a scene of horror, absolute horror. I strongly still can see myself looking down on Auntie, and she was naked from the breast down, and there was blood on her face, and I can't recall. Still, it's a blank from that scene, that viewing that scene, and the next definite recollection I have, I've stood on the drive and I've got my hands in this position, thinking I've got to get some help from somewhere. And when we went back in the house, I wanted to go back in to cover her up because she was such a private person.
Police and forensic experts arrived at the scene and began to gather evidence. Their methods were later heavily criticised by the Court of Appeal.
Twice I went back in that house afterwards. There was no, like you see on the television, forensic taping and do not touch this area. I could have gone back in and leaned against that wall after Auntie murder. So I just went back in that house as a sightseer almost, tell us walk, go through and see if you can see anything's missing.
Susan May was convicted by these fingerprints. The prosecution said they contained her aunt's blood. New forensics say these tests, carried out 16 years ago, were seriously flawed. But Susan still went from being a witness to a suspect.
I saw the police outside the front door, which I thought was unusual because they'd been coming round to the back door, and it was quite early morning, and I was busy trying to get Mum some breakfast and everything, and I opened the door and there were a crowd of them. I just said, you just have to wait a minute while I muzzle the dog. So I came back in and muzzled the dog to let them in, for them to say, "Susan May, we're arresting you for." And I ran up the stairs to get to my son, but she followed me up, and they followed me up and dragged me down the stairs and took me away. And Toby followed them, and I think he got stopped at Royton traffic lights until they had to come back home.
The brutal murder attracted public and media outrage.
And I remember on second or third day of trial, Michael Cheetham, my solicitor, coming in with rolled up newspapers, and he went, "Oh, I'd just better show you this before we go in." I went, "What is it?" And it was one of the newspapers, one of the Mirror, said, "Niece's handprint in blood on wall." And he went, don't worry about that. He went, because your jury are there to listen to the evidence put before them, not to read the newspapers. And I went, are you sure? He went, no, they'll just be there to listen to. Well, of course, the media can influence. And the headlines were pretty horrific.
Despite being on bail, the jury viewed Susan behind a bulletproof dock, specially built to hold the Strangeways rioters.
You're in a box that's bulletproof glass with a little gap underneath that, because I was there making notes, everything I thought that was being missed, and I'd pass these notes and had to bang on this glass. And when that jury came back with guilty, all I remember is banging on the glass and saying, you're wrong, and turning, because like family and friends were sat to this side of me and saying, help me. And the judge then said there's no other sentence, but he gave me the life sentence right away then. And that was my first experience to take me down, and that was my first experience of being taken to prison. I was taken to Risley.
Susan was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, with the recommendation she serve a minimum tariff of 12 years.
And I remember for months waiting for this time, and I got it in my head that there'd be somebody, a friend or one of my children would be coming in saying, Mum, we've come for you, it's all a big mistake. And I really got this in my head. Every time my cell door opened, I think, right, who will this be now? It'll be Michael Cheetham telling me he's got it all wrong, my solicitor. And it'll be somebody, a friendly face saying, come along, it's a big mistake and you're going home.
She was to stay in prison for 12 years. The door never opened. Nobody came to say it had all been a mistake. In May 2005, she was finally freed. In the eyes of the state, a guilty woman who had served her time.
I can walk about with my head held high because I've not done anything wrong, and so I've no fear or worry like that because I've not done anything.
Susan May has been diagnosed with breast cancer. She has had surgery and just finished a course of chemotherapy.
I've had to take my finger off the pulse a little bit because I've felt so under par, and it's been so annoying because fighting my case, I live, eat, breathe, sleep my case. I'm out of prison, but I'm not free.